Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had a chance to enjoy that break. I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker. This is Alex Stokes. Alex is a researcher with the Ethereum Foundation, and he's going to be giving a presentation entitled State of Our Union.
Hey everyone, let's see. Okay, sounds like you can hear me. Yeah, I think the scheduled talk title was something like very extreme, like staking economics, MEV, and like the future of Ethereum. I'm not exactly sure where that came from, but basically I thought it was like a good sort of place to start, and I've distilled it down into what I'm going to call the state of our union. Basically just looking at like what we've done, where we're going, maybe how we're going to get there. Let's dig in. So yeah, I mean this talk might be a little more like higher level and just like trying to understand like, yeah, like what are we all doing here? Like what really is Ethereum anyway? It's obviously this thing that's like brought us all together. We like, maybe we stake, maybe we like, I don't know, do all the crazy stuff that the protocol allows. But yeah, let's maybe try to define that a little bit more concretely. One thing we can say is that it's a successful crypto economic protocol. You know, these are the types of things we mean when we say blockchain, and I have some like graphs here. So yeah, a lot of numbers. I mean, the main point to take away from this is I was just trying to call out that like there's this like staking layer that many of you are aware of, and yeah, like it seems like it's been a resounding success. You know, we've had the merge recently, and this is now a chart here of staking supply, and basically, you know, it's like up only. People seem to like staking. And yeah, there's some like absolute numbers here. So you see there's like over 28 million ETH staked. That's like 23% of all Ether, which is like actually quite a lot. And then like drilling in a bit into like the protocol details itself, you see like these numbers at the bottom where, yeah, we don't have to get into them, but essentially it's just saying that like the activity on the beacon chain in terms of the protocol execution is like very healthy. So like almost 100% sort of participation by each validator. The messages they need to go on chain get in like pretty much immediately. That's good. This says 99% correctness, basically saying like when I run my version of the protocol, like do I agree with everyone? And again, numbers like incredibly high. There's this effectiveness. Anyway, point being, you see it's a bunch of very high numbers. That's all very good. So that was like kind of, you know, me claiming there's a successful consensus layer. There's also the successful execution layer. This is like the top, let's say 50 gas guzzlers from Etherscan I just pulled yesterday, and you can see there's like all these applications. Uniswap is at the top, different like Telegram trading bots, Tether the stablecoin. What else is on here? Arbitrum, so like layer 2s. That's pretty cool because people are actually like not just using like Ethereum, the execution layer, but also using it for like their different blockchains. Yeah, people seem to really like Ethereum. And, you know, there's a bunch of stuff here. ZK Sync, Starknet, Circle, USDC, more stable coins, all kinds of stuff. NFTs at the bottom there. Point being is, in this next column I called out, you see people are paying like millions of dollars like to use the chain, right? So it's not just like, oh, we like this because like we can like run some code and like just watch it happen. It's more like, you know, you would imagine these people are getting at least that much value out of what they're doing if they're paying for it. So you have all these applications on top of this consensus layer that we have. There's all DeFi, stablecoins I'll call out because that's like a pretty important category in its own right. NFTs, people really like these like digital collectible things. Ether just itself as like a product or application. There's this whole, you know, arc of establishing Ether as money. Layer 2s that I called out, all this fun stuff. So we have a very successful consensus layer, very successful execution layer. And then, you know, I think it's also important to note that like we are trying, well, at least some of us are trying to establish this core asset Ether as a money, right? As like a monetary product. And really what I'm trying to make, the point I'm trying to make here with this slide is that there's a successful economy like on top of all of this stuff as well. I'm not endorsing this NFT collection. This is just the top one on OpenSea, but I just grabbed it because it was handy. Really, the takeaway is simply that they price things in ETH. This is like showing that like people do actually use Ether, in this case as like a unit of account, one of these like primary properties of money. That's pretty cool. Right now, the like Ether market cap, to the extent that's a useful metric, you know, 245 million. That's like quite a lot considering this was like nothing just a few years ago. We've like kind of memed this all into existence. That's pretty cool. And this is interesting if you like, so I went to this list I found. The website was like worldometers. Either way, you look at like GDP by country around the world, and if you put Ethereum as like sort of a nation state in this list, it sits somewhere between like Peru and New Zealand, essentially like top 50. That's like a big deal, I think. Again, considering it was like nothing just years ago. And also too, right, like, so there's like this protocol bit, right? There's like the consensus layer, execution layer, the apps that use it. But on top of that, there's like this social layer, right? So you have this like incredible community that's like why we're all here. I honestly ran out of steam just like finding all of these images. Like there was like so many more events that like people are putting on all over the world, and it's like so exciting to see. So that's pretty cool. What is Ethereum? Here's like a very dense answer. Blockchain protocol, hosting a digital economy, coordinating a passionate community. Pretty cool stuff. That being said, I want to like zoom out a bit and like start to ask like, what will it mean in 50 years? So like not just like, oh cool, like we have this blockchain and like we like swap some tokens and maybe some of us are rich now, that's exciting, whatever, but like, you know, in like 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, like no one will care about that, right? It's really, we can ask like, what are we doing here that will like mean something like in like a time scale that's important? And that's when you can start to ask these like very big abstract questions around like, what are we doing? What is Ethereum like as a project? And you can like quickly get into like all this theory around like building institutions and like things like that. So one way to see this is that like, you know, there's like collections of humans through time, and we like try to make up these different institutions to basically help us organize ourselves and like figure out how to make sense of like the chaos of reality. There's like things you've heard of here in the middle, like your tribe, a church, nation state, these different things that we've built. You know, generally they like collect bigger groups of people, so then you have new challenges as they get bigger, but ultimately we have these technologies to help us like coordinate, again, yeah, all these like bundles of people doing all different random things. And yeah, I'm again not endorsing necessarily these politics, but there is this like there's definitely this like core in crypto ethos of this like cypherpunk idealism. You could imagine there's almost this like digital state, and Ethereum could be seen as a realization of these sets of ideas. So again, zooming way out, one way to think of this is like Ethereum is like essentially this like state building exercise. We are coordinating on the internet to make all this happen, hopefully in a way that it like makes us all better off. Also, this is just a random location. I just picked it. I wanted to pick an empty spot on the map. But who knows, you know, some of you are into these like network state ideas, and like maybe one day there's like a physical realization of the Ethereum network state, and we like build some seasteading complex wherever these lines cross on the Google map. So my point here is that, yeah, like what is Ethereum really trying to do in terms of like being a really big impactful project that like people will write about in the history books, you know, 50, 100 years from now. One thing we could say is that like there's just like so much going on in the world, especially as we like have this like information revolution. You know, like we weren't meant to like sit and like deal with social media. Like it's here just to like take our attention and like distract us 6 ways to Sunday, and like it's kind of a huge mess, as you probably are all very familiar. And because of that, my claim is that like institutions that like have these like very strong properties are like relatively more valuable, simply because like, yeah, we like need something. Like again, there are problems we see. We now have this like digital ecosystem that we're all kind of embedded in, and the question becomes like, how do we make sense of that? So yeah, it seems like Ethereum could become one of these institutions. So far I've tried to paint the picture that it's like heading in that direction, certainly, and that's really cool. But then there's a question, because of the nature of these like new like inputs and forces upon us, again, sort of just like the internet being like a blender for everyone's cognition, you would have to wonder like how can we stay aligned, which is everyone's fun hot word. And my answer to that is that we should focus on values. So this is something I think about quite a bit, like what are Ethereum's values? Like if there's one takeaway from this talk you should have, is that like basically to the extent that we have challenges as we grow as a community, we should like lean to our values and use that to like help us make choices. So it's really important, like you should probably spend like most of your time thinking about what the values are, and the other, minority of your time thinking about how to like execute upon them. I've kind of come to like these three that I like. We'll walk through them. A big one is credible neutrality, which you probably hear all the time. Another one we'll call permissionless innovation. I'll explain that in a little bit. And this one I kind of made up, concrete optimism. Yeah. So credible neutrality. Vitalik has an article on this. That's probably like the sort of canonical text if you want to read that. But what do we mean, right? So neutrality is this idea that no one who's, like if you think of Ethereum as this like game and say a game theory sense, no one playing the game has any special advantage over like any other player. That's kind of the core idea. And it's not enough that you just have neutrality, because for other people to like really feel safe, let's say, playing the game, they also need to know that it is neutral and that everyone else also knows that, right? Like you get this like huge reduction in like this sort of strategy space of the game if everyone knows that like everyone's expected to play in a certain way. So this is what I mean with the credibility bit, that there's almost this like common knowledge layer. I'll draw an analogy here. There's this whole field of like development economics, which is basically saying, I would say like, and sort of insight from that field is that basically one way we can say that things develop in this like capitalism GDP sense is that the more that a nation state has these like strong property rights, the more basically everyone is better off over time. Simply because it like gives you some properties around, I can own this thing and that I can also own in the future. No one will arbitrarily change the rules on me around like ownership of this capital. And yeah, there might be better systems, but this one seems to work at scale most of the time. And this last bit here, I was just trying to point out that we talk about these other things around like censorship resistance, immutability of the chain, like code is law. I'll kind of claim these are like all consequences of credible neutrality, and ultimately we want to just have this notion that like there's some sense of like property rights in the legal sense, but in this like digital space. Permissionless innovation, I think this one's like a lot more clear. Basically, you can do whatever you want. Sometimes it's actually not what you want as a protocol designer, but it's here. This is good in terms of like state building, because it means that there's like possibly boundless opportunity for anyone to like join and play. And taken together with credible neutrality, okay, I have 5 minutes. I'll speed up. Credible neutrality and permissionless innovation, everyone's incentivized to join and play this game. Concrete optimism, I'm gonna gloss over this. Basically, I wanted to call out that like I think as a community, Ethereum's like very optimistic. We're like very hopeful, and like we're willing to try new crazy experiments, and generally think that we'll all be better off by doing so. So great, I've tried to paint like a nice picture for you. Does that mean that's it? Like we're all good? And basically no. The point here is that like the protocol isn't perfect. There's like rules we have, but they're leaky. We have these like leaky abstractions. A direct example here is like MEV, which that stuff has been said today, so I'll just assume you know what it means. And yeah, I mean, again, a like very sort of hot button, easily displayed example of this is OFAC censorship with all of our MEV infrastructure. This is a chart of validators, relays, and builders, and you can see there's quite a bit with these like red bars going on. This is from censorship.pix from Tony, you heard on the panel a minute ago. And yeah, so like the point here is just that there are all these unintended consequences. Like we can try to like make this nice set of rules, but like when they are put in the real world, it turns out that there's all these things we don't see that lead to issues. A big one is staking dominance, which I was going to drill into a little bit more. Restaking's here as kind of an example of like, no one was talking about this even say a year ago, but now it's like this huge thing. MEV was a very similar thing a few years ago, and now the question is like, who knows what else will happen in the future, where suddenly it's like, oh, there was something we didn't think about with the way you could use Ethereum, and suddenly it could lead to like quite a problem. Right, so I was going to drill in here and speak to like staking. Again, a big issue most of you are probably familiar with is Lido dominance. So if we have, say, almost 900,000 validators, 31% of them are staked through Lido. That's not great. It should be obvious it's like a direct centralization vector. And I think ultimately, like a lot of the big issues are around soft power, just because it's like in the limits. Like imagine all the ETH is staked through Lido. Now basically their governance token is essentially the Ethereum governance token, but the Ethereum or the DAO governance token is not necessarily distributed in a way that aligns with like Ethereum community. So that's not great. Yeah, and to the extent that this happens, it like really starts to erode all these values I was just talking about. So that's not good. What can we do? So this is the thing Justin was talking about in the last talk around stake capping. You could imagine if we say, okay, it would be bad to, for example, have all the ETH staked in Lido. We could just say within the protocol, we want to target a fixed amount. And we could just pick a number, say there's like 20% stake today. We say we want that. How do we get there? Well, we actually adjust the rewards curve in the protocol such that it becomes irrational to stake if there's more than 20% ETH in the protocol. And that's what this graph here is showing. That say, you know, at like 5% ETH staked, you get 5% APR, for example, and then it decreases down out to say like 20. That'd be cool. If we do so, then say there's like 20% stake securing the protocol, 80% doing whatever else, all this like crazy application nonsense I was calling out. The issue with this is that MEV still exists. You know, take this as a shorthand for like all execution layer rewards. To the extent that this happens, you end up in a place where it adjusts the rewards curve down even more. And this becomes an issue because if we take the rewards curve that I had and just shift it down a bit, you get to this regime that I called on red of negative rewards. What this means in practice is that, for example, the individual solo staker, they're basically paying, say, one ETH a year to basically buy a lottery ticket to maybe get 10 from like some MEV block that they propose. This isn't great because bigger players are more well capitalized and able to like buffer these types of sort of payments because, yeah, they just have more capital to play this game. It's sort of law of large numbers. You end up in a place where they can play these games for longer than, say, the smaller players. That's not great. So is there a fix to this fix of stake capping, participation targeting? Mev burn has been floated. There's some ideas around how you'd actually try to capture the MEV in the protocol itself and either burn it, smooth it, do something with it. The issue here was this volatility in the rewards itself. Without this, basically you can't have this lowering of the curve and you end up in a spot where it's more like this. Some other ideas floating around, you can imagine every validator is like their own staking pool. I'll call it work here by like Denkrad and Magnoiter at the EF. Rather than have like Lido or Rocket Pool, you could imagine a construction where like every validator has their own staking pool, their own LST. And that could be cool, but then you kind of have this issue where like the reason you have these staking pools in the first place is to like have fungibility around like the LST. And if like everyone has their own, then they're not immediately fungible and it's not clear how to do that. We could just give up and say, stat this money, call it a day. That's possibly not a good answer either. So yeah, I mean, what can we do? Basically keep doing what you're doing, like unironically, just like be aligned, and that's not just posturing. But what I mean by that is that we should live out the values that I called out earlier. When people disagree with you, try to incorporate their opinions, but ultimately have some principles used that you think are going to lead to a better future and act in accordance with those. That's it.
Perfect. We do have time for about maybe one or two questions if anyone in the audience has any. All right, not seeing any. Thank you very much, Alex, for an excellent, oh wait, there is one. Thank you very much. I missed it. Oh my gosh.
So given the set of values you mentioned and using them as a guiding principle, how do you feel about enshrining PBS?
Okay, this is a great exercise. So yeah, if we were to enshrine PBS, you'd probably end up in a regime where you wouldn't have as much trust, say, in the relay. There's probably a lot more you could do around capturing MEV. That would all be good. And yeah, you would get to a place where, yeah, what would this be? Probably in the credible neutrality bucket, just saying that like, there is this MEV sort of like metagame that's happening, but to the extent that we can, by enshrining PBS in the protocol, you like bring that back into the protocol such that now it can be dealt with in a nice way. And suddenly the sort of board game we're all playing is like more level.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, once again, Alex, thank you very much for a very thoughtful presentation.
Thank you, everyone.